February is here, so is a little bit better weather. So are we to go over the Oaklawn Park late pick 5 on Friday afternoon. Nick Tammaro here, joined by an esteemed pair ready to set their sights on this pick 5. Ashley Anderson is joining me from TwinSpires.com. And of course, Oaklawn Park expert pick analyst Emily Gullikson. Ladies, this is a great sequence. Obviously fun to have Oaklawn back, right, Ashley?
Yes, very challenging, and I'm glad that Emily is here because she definitely is an expert at Oaklawn Park.
Well, as we know with horse racing, only as good as your last pick. So we'll try to continue it first off the layoff or second off the layoff. I guess it'll be day 2 into the meet by the time that this pick 5 rolls around.
Coming from somebody who looks at a million races a week, Emily, you have my sympathy with these 12 race cards. This was fun enough for me. Looking forward to this sequence that, of course, begins on Friday in race number 8 at 3:58 Eastern time with General MacArthur overnight at 1 1/8 on dirt. And a little bit unlike some of the races we'll talk about a little later in the sequence, this race does not have an abundance of pace. And I wondered if that might work to the advantage of a couple of different horses. Emily, how do you think we can get this thing started?
Yeah, I saw it kind of similar. In terms of running style, I don't think any horse in here has a pace advantage or disadvantage. So you probably want to use horses that can do a little bit of both. And the way I always start this race, or any race really, is just by assessing the favorite. And I'll probably repeat that as we go. And Sir Greyland is most likely to run in this spot, though they are cross-entered on Saturday. I think their running style could fit in here, but to your point, in terms of early speed, that might force their stablemate from the outside, number 11, First Division, a horse that's been able to get a couple perfect trips from the inside, but that could change here, and I think that's probably going to have to be the case as you have American Law maybe trying to look to go forward as well as Energize in here. I kind of look for more of that type of stalking trip. Well, I think you make a good point about that early pace. That could be a scenario, but I think there's enough good riders in here, horses that have tactical speed, and especially for the 9 furlong distance where class and, again, having a little bit of positional speed could get the trip. If you're asking me for a horse in this race, I'm not necessarily against number 5, Sir Greyland. I think that they fit. And I had to use number 3, Super Cruise. He's just a super honest racehorse, as well as number 6, Gun Party, who I think is going to get that first run trip and coming out of a trouble trip in their most recent start. That's probably my top pick in this race. And then the long shot I wanted to include was number 10, Runaway Again. So in this first leg, 3, 5, 6, and 10.
I have a feeling we're going to cast a wide net over this bunch.
Yeah, honestly, I had every number that you just listed, but I included Energize, who I thought was going to sit off that early pace setter. Godolphin Homebred. You got Michael Stidham, who is high percentage going from all weather to dirt. I like the way that this horse ran 2 back at Churchill, going that 1.125 distance. So I wanted to include the 8, but I definitely thought this was one to spread deep. And I had circled all of the ones that Emily just mentioned. Sir Greyland is a horse I really liked, and I saw in person at Churchill when Brian Hernandez came back from injury, got that win in that allowance optional claimer, and was a little concerned too, how fast is the pace going to be, but he sat a little bit closer to the pace that day, going 1 1/16. And I think with Brian aboard, always does well with Sir Greyland. He's always been right there, even when he's run this distance. He's barely missed a couple of times going the 9 furlong distance. So I think he's certainly in play, and I respect him a lot. And if he stays in the field, I honestly would almost rather just include him and maybe take out the 11, because I think Sir Greyland's just stronger on class overall.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I like the 11 First Division, and even with Sir Greyland in there, I have no beef with kind of using him and maybe making him. I would probably pick him on top if I was making a public selection in the race. I thought his effort in the coach was very good. I think that this field is tougher than that one, no doubt about it, but he ran arguably a winning race. I think he's also the most versatile of some of you want to group together like the 3, 5, and 11, the favorites in terms of the pace scenario. He's the one who can probably go forward the most, that would adjust to what could be a negative pace scenario for a deep closing type. I wanted to mention Energize as well. I'm glad you did. I thought his 2-back, one other than win it at Churchill, numbers-wise was good enough to win this race. So I think you want to include a horse like that at 8-1 when given the opportunity to do so. I didn't really have much of an issue with the 7 Mac Man either, who, it says in the comment line, no match for top 2 last time out, but that was Rattle and Roll and Willie D's.
Right.
Like those are better horses than what you're running against in here. The 1 1/8 might really be pushing the limits for him distance-wise, but he's another that, what is he going to do in a 1 1/8 with a somewhat moderate pace? Is that probably going going to help him? Is he going to be able to run back to that race maybe with Hurry going back to September of 2024? So as I expected, we have a lot of numbers that we're kicking around in here. Emily mentioned the 10 Runaway Again, of course, a Canadian Triple Crown race winner, having won the Prince of Wales, now in the care of David Jacobson. I'm going to dovetail this question with you, Emily, with something that you're going to run into undoubtedly handicapping Oaklawn. What level of concern do you have about some of these runners that have been based at Oaklawn that clearly have not had as much training opportunity over the last few weeks? You're seeing most of these entrants tomorrow have not worked in 2 weeks. Is that something you factored in at all? And are you worried about that potentially with a horse like Runaway Again?
Um, Yes and no. So in a couple ways, I think the fact that they've had a break in some ways is different than if they had just scheduled and then they took a 2-month break kind of organically, because they've been sort of preparing for this break. As far as Runaway Again, they were entered back in the Tinsel Stakes, which is a 9-furlong stakes race as well, back on December 20th. So at least that's showing me some intent to run on this circuit. And Christian Torres lands there and was aboard American Law last out. I think that can be a concern. With that said, I think kind of the bigger questions with Runaway Again is the horse is just going to have to get faster. Number-wise, he's too slow. So, yes, there could be that fitness, still going to have to run faster in order to win. But the type of horse that is just a longer priced horse that I'd want to use for intent, for the fact that as we're looking at this race saying, there's so many ways we could go. I mean, a lot of the horses we didn't even mention, like they really wouldn't be a surprise in here. So again, that was a horse that I wanted to use, but I think that fitness would be different if it was an unplanned break coming in versus having that planned break, knowing the horses are going to basically all be, 45 days first off.
Makes sense. That is the first leg, the General MacArthur overnight. Worth noting, Runaway Again was entered in the 5th season on Thursday. He was scratched out of there and will go in here, presumably. Well, we basically rattled off every number except the 220 the 30-1 shot. So I promise we're going to narrow things down a little bit as we go forward, hopefully in race number 9, which is a one other than at 6 furlongs. This is a big field and an evenly matched one, depending on how you feel about the 5 Vital Mind, who does loom a relatively heavy favorite, definitely the shortest price on the morning line of any horse in this sequence. Ashley, for or against Vital Mind, and if against, then who?
Yeah, that was one where I was going back and forth on this, because you can make the argument it's a very short price on the morning line, 8-5. This horse last out when facing Allowance Company was a distant second, and for that reason I wanted to try to play against this horse at that short price. But Jose Ortiz on the mount, you always got to respect him. He did not have the mount last out. He's regaining the mount here. And the first, debut race over a muddy track was just barely beaten that day at Oaklawn. But I really like the 8 Sharp Swinger, who's a little bit better of a price. Got Flavian Pratt aboard. Last out was in a restricted stakes at Oaklawn, but coming off a layoff, ran well at Churchill 2 back in a claiming race for Mike Maker. And I thought, looking overall at Oaklawn, 2 for 3, 3 for 4 at the distance. So I almost considered singling here. I think there's some bigger prices you could include in your ticket, but the 8 is the overall choice for me over the 8-5 morning line favorite.
Emily, where'd you land?
Well, I'll go back to your first question. I think Vital Mind does make sense as the favorite in here, and maybe isn't quite going to be as short, because I do think that Sharp Swinger will get a lot of attention here. And if 13, that's the one draws in, that horse is going to get attention here. That horse is a must-use as far as I'm concerned. Vital Mind in their most recent start, it was a second-place finish, but it was still a winning effort for the level with a slightly higher par than today's race, even though it's a similar non-winners of one allowance. But they had trouble at the start. They got shuffled back and then ended up making that closing run. The winner of the race was an open-length pace-setting even money chalk winner, Stiglitz, who is trained by Phil D'Amato, who does have That's the One on the 13, looking just for one scratch to draw in. So I used Vital Mind in here, That's the One, and also included number 4 Hailstorm. And I kind of felt that group was where I was content with in here.
So I agree. I think Vital Mind's very much the one to beat. I like Ashley's case for Sharp Swinger. Hailstorm was a horse who was making up some real ground last out in otherwise a totally pace-dominated race. So I thought he was one potentially worth upgrading second off the layoff as well. My off-the-wall price horse, and this horse may be more of a placing chance than a real win candidate, I have to bet a horse like the 6 Dual Monarchy off the race that he ran last time out. Now, I understand this owner or this trainer and jockey combine quite frequently, but last time out, This horse was 5 wide around the first turn, made a prolonged move into the backstretch to go right into the teeth of that pace, and really fought on the entire way. Now cuts back in distance, ran just about a winning race, 2 starts back, went third at a huge price. I don't think that he's going to be 9-2 again in this spot, but I do think he's going to be plenty of value, probably in the 15-1 range or so. And if this pace heats up, which on paper, I mean, it really should, this is a horse who might come clipping along for a piece of it as well. Always trained well, apparently. We see that bullet workout a couple of weeks back, almost 3 weeks ago now. This is a horse who I felt like could get a real piece of this thing. I wanted to ask you guys about a horse that I thought was a little interesting. I don't know pace-wise how much of a chance this horse has. I thought Run Jalen Run, the 9, ran really, really well last time out. I mean, that was a super strong pace. Inexorable came from a mile out to win it. And there's actually a horse that's running a little bit later, around 2 turns, that comes out of that race that I like as well. Emily, did you give Run Jalen Run any consideration?
I think it was mostly just based on the way the race shape stood out. That might play against him a little bit, and then also running that top effort last out. But I would not be against throwing this horse on the ticket if you wanted to make a case for them. I'm not negative on Run Jalen Run. They have numbers that are fast enough. They've run competitive races. It's a horse that does have that early speed, flow upgrade, as you mentioned, from that December 20th race. Yeah, I wouldn't have any fault if you wanted to end up using Run Jalen Run on the ticket.
Ashley, any opinion on Run Jalen Run?
Yeah, I had that horse circled as well. Going to be a front running type, I would assume here, going straight to the front. I also thought that the 10 was an interesting 8-1 price here, who had run at Oaklawn in the past going longer, but went to the front in those previous starts. Last couple starts has not looked as strong, but coming off a layoff here, Louis Saez aboard. I thought the 9 and the 10 were interesting prices to include if you want to choose between going with the 5 or going with the 8 and then throwing in some bigger prices. I was looking to the outside posts from the 9 and the 10.
Our BetShare ticket is starting to look like a bingo card as we go along in this sequence. Let's go to leg number 3, the Bugler overnight at 6 furlongs on the dirt. And I think potentially a race where we might see a little bit more clarity. I didn't think that the win candidates here were all that vast. And so I'll just kick it off by saying that to me, you have a horse like the 5 Foie Gras, who I thought ran really well last time out. 3-1 on the morning line here. I don't see why she's not going to get a very similar type of trip this time around, sitting just off the pace. Flavien Prat gets on board for Mike Maker. And what I like about what Maker did with this horse is not only did she posted a bullet workout on January 19th. Obviously, she missed all that training time when the track was not open for training, but he blew her out on Tuesday. And I think that's good in terms of taking some of the edge off. I thought Foie Gras would be really tough in here. I acknowledge that in many ways, Blue Fire is a horse to beat. She's had only one foray recently into open company, and it was an excellent effort, a second place finish in the 8 Bells last year on Oaks Day. But I do wonder if her last couple of races are a little bit dressed up by soft trips. I kind of wanted to just use the 5 and 7 in here. I think despite this bulky field, there isn't a ton of speed, and Anna Karina is really, really fast. So if she is somehow able to get loose in this field, I thought she could be dangerous. Ashley, what did you make of this Bugler overnight?
I'm with you on the 5 Foie Gras. That was my top choice in here. I had the 7 I had is more of like a C in this field, but I think this is a chance. Blue Fire, I was kind of trying to make a case to play against. I mean, this horse goes to the front, has run very well, very consistent overall, but I do want to try, I think, getting the trip that I'm hoping that we get from the 5, sitting right off that early pace setter with Flavien aboard, runs well at Oaklawn, runs well at the distance. So I think the 5 to me really stood out as a top choice in this field.
How about you, Emily?
I went towards the outside with Tap It Quick, who moves to one extreme to the other, had the rail last out, moves to the outside, and not only just that, but gets that extra furlong of ground. I don't think the 5.5 being on the inside benefit them at all. Horse that has tactical speed is now outside, has fitness, has a race over the track. And I think really Tap It Quick should be able to get that right trip. As you talk about that early pace, their stablemate Anna Karina is going to go. And I think that really forces the hand of Blue Fire as well, because if they let Anna Karina go, to Nick's point, she's gone. And so, and if those two hook up, then Tap It Quick should be sitting in that perfect stalking trip. So that makes me a little bit negative. Anytime, Blue Fire could certainly win, but it's a short price that we're saying here's a scenario where she can't. Foie Gras to me had kind of that perfect trip last out. I don't necessarily think they're going to have the same. That's why I kind of just started to look elsewhere. The other horse that I used is Queen's Martini, who was the best bet on December 20th, just has a progressive form at Oaklawn Park. Even the race back where they finished off the board, that sixth place, that was a complete excuse that day, a better than looked effort. So that was upgraded in here. The other horse that I wanted to use was number 2, Harbor Springs. And it's almost kind of a similar form cycle pattern to Tap It Quick, where it's second off, going from 5.5 to 6, pointed to Oaklawn. Greg Foley doesn't send out a lot of horses to Oaklawn, but when they do, they're live. They don't always win, but they come out and they run big races, and I'm just not going to ignore that. They're going to have to get a trip from the inside, but that horse seems live to me. So that's the direction I went. I thought there's a chance that those 2 favorites, they could get beat in here, and I wanted to cover the bases.
Emily, with a few more options, Ashley and I opting for foie gras. Go ahead, Ashley.
I was going to say I like the 4 as well. Hush It Honey at 10-1, moving up in class, but you got that pairing of Rafael Bejarano and Randy Morse winning 3 for 4 over the last 2 months, and they've got a $6.75 ROI. I like the last 2 starts, 1 at Oaklawn, 2 back, so that was a longer price. I wanted to include a horse for the course and a distance specialist here.
I think the question that everybody's really wondering now that we've talked about half the field is foie gras from a culinary perspective, yay or nay? I'm a nay.
I haven't tried it.
Oh, like to eat?
Eat it, yeah.
Oh. I was like, I can pass on both, I
don't
guess.
think I've ever had it.
I'm not going to eat foie gras the horse nor foie gras the actual
right.
item. So, yeah, no, not happening. One of the few things I don't like, honestly. Let's go to race 11, the Southwest, which obviously will take us a little bit longer because we've got some horses in here to talk about. No question about it. Obviously, take out the 5 litmus test, who will not make the trip to Arkansas, but his stablemate Butane will. Just a really fascinating edition of this race, ladies, and a ton of speed signed up. So obviously exciting to see really how this first half mile goes and how much that's going to affect the second half mile of it. Emily, I'll start by asking you your top pick and just horses that you think in general, in addition to that pick, are potential win candidates here.
So I ended up using 3. We talked a little bit about this race on Monday. That to me, Rancho Santa Fe, I don't know if they're the most likely winner, but I feel like this is the time to give this horse a look right back because they just didn't have any pace. We're watching the race back at Keeneland that they ended up winning, but as far as the Smarty Jones Stakes, they just never had a chance to compete. The way the race shook out, broke slow, was against that race flow. Now comes right back, has a rider change, shown intent to run here at Oaklawn Park. This is the time. And you're getting price compensation where the horse does have to step forward. This is the time and place. So I used Rancho Santa Fe. I used number 3 Butane. I was negative on litmus test. They obviously can't win now. And I also used a code, and it was those 3 for me. I mean, you start getting deeper, you can make cases for anybody. So I'm keeping it pretty shallow for myself. 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that on Rancho Santa Fe. That was a horse I was going to talk about as well. I think what we would normally be inclined to say is this horse's races are a little bit too slow, but, understanding that Decode's race came around 1 turn and Butane's only been around 1 turn, the route horses in here aren't that fast, right? So Rancho Santa Fe being able to get to an 85 to 90 type of Brisnet speed number is probably going to be around where you need to be anyway. So I think he's a major player in this race. Ashley, did you see it as a race where you could narrow down at all? And if so, who? If not, who else?
I went with 3, but I tried to play against the 2 morning line favorites, taking out litmus test. I went with the 7 as my top choice, Liberty National. Last out was beaten 3/4 of a length going. That mount is 16th at Fairgrounds. 2 back had that open lengths when breaking his maiden at Churchill. So he was a horse that I had circled from his last start that I just really wanted to play next time out. He's 10-1, so I love the price there. I also like the 9 Strategic Risk, and I included Soldier and Diplomat. Now, we saw him win going 1 turn at Churchill, and then his first 2-turn effort in the Kentucky Jockey Club. He obviously was outfinished by Further Ado, but I think second time going 2 turns, I'm expecting improvement here. He's been working out really well at Fairgrounds, so at 12-1, I wanted to include him, but I was looking to throw in some bigger prices here, and then the 9-2 on Strategic Risk.
Yeah, fair enough. I actually, I don't have terribly much to add to the horses that you guys have laid out. I'm tremendously interested to see how Decode runs in this race because obviously he's a terrific talent, and we have no idea just how good he really is. That debut effort was sensational. Cleared the field from the 11. Obviously, never gave them a chance. Distance wise, I don't know where he's going to top out. I hope for his sake in this race, a mile and a 16th is within that realm. I do think that's possible. I also fear that he's going to face an enormous amount of pace pressure with Reclamation to his inside. I mean, I can't imagine they're shipping Butane over to rate him into submission. You've got Soldier and Diplomat on the outside. Bricklin has speed. Strategic Risk wants to be forward. I mean, there's just one speed horse after another in this field of what should be 13 with litmus tests coming out. I actually wanted to try the other Mark Casse, Jack Oxley horse because I thought Silent Tactic was a little bit taken out of the game last time out. I think he ran his race. He just didn't get a setup. And they crawled early, sprinted home. I'm using the word sprinted liberally. They came home well enough, but I thought he showed some interest. This is a horse that's by Tacitus out of a Gunrunner mare. They paid 100 times the Tacitus stud fee. So he is clearly a horse that trained well in advance of the OBS April sale in 2025. He's come out running each time. Yeah, he's got to get a little bit better, but why not try a horse like that at 20-1 as opposed to a horse like Butane, who we've seen a good bit of. We don't know anything around 2 turns at a fifth of that price. I'd much rather have a horse like Silent Tactic, who I want to use. I want to use Liberty National as well and Rancho Santa Fe. I'm playing this race for a complete collapse. The only concern I have with Liberty National is I thought the Gunrunner was just an eyesore. And I know he kind of picked up late to get second, but that was really as Crown the Buckeye just completely waved the white flag in the final 70 yards of that race. That being said, I know Kenny McPeak is really high on this horse, and he clearly has talent based on the way he improved second time out. Reportedly been training well down at the fairgrounds. And Kenny, interestingly, kept a lot of horses at fairgrounds. He also sent a couple of horses from Oaklawn to fairgrounds so that they could train, which I think is really shrewd and made sure that they didn't miss any time. So I'm going to play it again for this thing to come apart altogether. But it is a race where I'm totally fascinated. Anybody else that either of you want to mention in here?
No, and I'm fine with Silent Tactic as well. He was actually the horse that I put on top in the Smarty Jones, just as a horse that had shown progression race to race. They'd already run him 2 turns against Open. But yeah, that was just pretty much the concern with the hot barn, that he'd have to get a little bit faster, but just might be one of those horses that runs to their competition. I think that kind of covers the group in here. It'll be also interesting just how the riders ride this race. A horse like Decode, for example, who did show speed on debut, but going back, even on that day, I think we talked about that race soon after, the field quality was a little bit suspect. So I think it was one of those cases where they just had the best horse in the race, and it was like, you have the outside post, like, don't get cute, just go. But, with one start and now they're doing something completely new, I don't necessarily think that Decode is like a one-way speed, especially if Reclamation does go. They could just be sitting right there, and it might be a race at that point where everybody's like, does that thing in the Kentucky Derby where they interview the jockeys, and everybody's like, I'm going to be trying to sit third. It's like, you can't all be sitting third. There's 20 of you. Come on, and then it ends up, everything changes, right? So it could be that type of race as well, where rider tactic plays a big role in the outcome.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sink or swim opportunity, right? We're going to see we'll know the real situation with Decode probably by the 5/8 pole. Because if he's hard used to stay close in a fast pace, then it's going to be a really big ask. But if he settles comfortably and, finds his way into a nice stride, I think it's something that he could definitely handle. It is a really fun edition of the Southwest. Again, we're expecting around a field of no more than 13. I would guess still the majority of these go in an opportunity to earn some valuable Derby points along the road to Derby 152. Another mile and an eighth event caps this 12 race card. It'll go at about 6:15 Eastern time on Friday afternoon. Emily, I'll start it with you. How are we going to close out this 12 race extravaganza and this very potentially costly pick 5?
I'm gonna actually throw it back to you, because Ashley and I were talking about this race before we went live, and she was talking about a single and I was talking about a single. So at that point, it's going to be on you if you want to add another horse, because I was on number 6, My Noble Knight. Ashley's on number 12, Money Run. We could leave it there unless Nick, you wanna bring it in, or Ashley, you had other horses, but those are kind of horses we were keying on.
No, I like narrowing it down. I think this is a race where you do kind of have to make a decision. I'll say this. I don't think there are a lot of win candidates in this race. I think there are probably, I liked the 6 and 12 both. I kind of would have probably made them two of my top three picks. I only had one sort of outsider that I wanted to get in there, and that was the 8 Cybertown. So I referenced this race earlier, the inexorable allowance race from back in December. This horse got completely eliminated at the start and ended up losing a ton of ground. He made what was effectively a meaningless late move. I mean, this was like the garbage time stat padding you'd see in a basketball game, but he did make up some ground. Go back through his PPs and specifically look at that Colonial race 2 back. Maybe he's wanted to go long. Right? I mean, maybe he's supposed to be around 2 turns. He now gets in at 108. I'm not somebody that integrates weight into my handicapping a ton, but he's getting 16 pounds from some of these horses. And I think the apprentice Amir Mendoza has actually made a really favorable impression through the first month or so of the meet. So I thought this was a horse that maybe we could throw in at a big price. I didn't really think much of the 10 Eastside Cool, who's going to be pretty well bet. I think this is a pretty big jump in class. He did run well last time out, but I don't see him getting a similar type of trip because the 2 horses immediately to his outside have a ton of speed. So if he lets them clear if he works to let them clear, he's going to work really hard to keep things going. That's going to help horses like My Noble Knight and Cybertown especially. And I do think, given the race flow in that money run race, I think My Noble Knight ran really well. He made a prolonged move around the outside, kind of reached contention, and then Money Run had just run them off their feet for the most part, rebroke at the 8th pole, and all was said and done. So I think we could settle on getting out of this thing 6, 8, 12. And at least having one leg where maybe we have less than 4 horses.
Yeah, and that was my thought on My Noble Knight as well. Is that was not the ideal trip. They were extra wide in there. Money Run ran the race of their career, which made me a little bit hesitant because it's the type of race a horse would regress off of, but he has been given 56 days, so I'm not going to be too harsh in that case. If he was coming back at less than 30 at a short price, be the type of favorite I'll play against every single time. But also with My Noble Knight, Tom Amoss starting out, a lot of those horses were extremely cold. And I've looked at some patterns from prior years, and he's done like a cold month and a hot month. So I'm trying to get ahead. I'm trying to get ahead of that stat, right? Because once it shows up in the paper, like it's going to hurt your prices. But My Noble Knight was favored that day, or short price that day. And this would be kind of the time to come back. So that was sort of my thought in here.
Ashley, you're not worried about Money Run duplicating that performance, even with potentially more pace pressure?
I can see numbers wise a 99 Bristnet if you're going off Bristnet, and then previously had figures in the 80s and low 70s. So yeah, she could regress off that number, but I'm feeling confident with the rest, and has run well, generally speaking, most times when showing up at Oaklawn. So I look at how hot of a pace that was, but I do think can potentially be the fastest in this field and wire the field here once again. So that's what I'm hoping will happen. But I don't disagree that this could also be one of those traps where it's going to be a bounce because of how high of a figure it was last out. But again, coming off 56 days of rest. So I'm hoping Peter Miller knows what he's doing here.
No question about it. And I think it's a fair assessment. I mean, this is a horse that usually speed horses like this, they only know one way to go. They take care of themselves a little bit race to race. So I think he'll fire a big shot again. It is a bit ironic he drew the far outside once again. We'll see if either of these AEs get in. If You're My Style gets in, that makes things even harder for Money Run. That would help both My Noble Knight and Cybertown substantially. We will see, of course, after scratches come out.
I would consider Hess as well if that horse can draw in somehow. He looks like he's sitting on a peak effort. Third off, they're stretching back out, projected to improve 2 back, but again, needs probably more racing luck to draw into the race and then some more to get a trip. But throwing that out there, when you see my top 3, I did put him in.
He gets the AR designation on our entries. I guess he gets recognized as an Arkansas bred. Don't tell anybody my pick's an Arkansas bred as well. But we won't. We'll keep that between us. We'll have a BetShare ticket for you tomorrow. It'll be after scratches. We're going to put our heads together and get with the brain trust there at TwinSpires and figure out how to get this ticket to a manageable amount and obviously sell off some shares of it. Great way to get involved in the late pick 5 tomorrow at Oaklawn Park. Emily, you're going to be back with us for some TwinSpires tournament spaces over the next couple of days.
Yes, absolutely. There's a couple of big tournaments taking place at Oaklawn Park, rescheduled tournaments from Friday, tomorrow, and Saturday, picking up the $1,000. I think they're calling it the Southwest Showdown, and then the $3,500 game. Those are coming up, as well as today. As soon as I kind of end here and head there, we'll pick up spaces there. But yes, follow along if you haven't already. The handle, if you follow me, you'll get the alert, but the handle to follow along, and if you haven't already, is at Tournaments TS, and that's where the spaces will be live from.
Very exciting. Looking forward to it very much. Couple of those Oaklawn tournaments that you alluded to, the $1,000 Southwest Showdown Friday, the Oaklawn Horse Players Championship on Saturday, 3,500 awarding spots to all different tournaments, including the NHC and BCBC, as well as the KDBC coming up on Kentucky Derby weekend. We also have the $10,000 race to the Road to the Kentucky Derby win ladder. Very excited about that. Covering races 5 through 11 at Oaklawn, races 4 through 11 at Aqueduct. Of course, we have the Withers at Aqueduct on Friday afternoon as well. Players with 4 wins split the $1,000 tier, 5 wins the $1,500 plus the $1,000, 6 wins split the $2,500, $1,500, and $1,000, and 7 or more wins split the full $10,000 prize pool. Again, if you win 4 races, you qualify to split $1,000, $5, $1,500, $6, $2,500, and $7, $5,000. More information on that, of course, available at TwinSpires.com. We are on the road to the Kentucky Derby, and one of the spots along the way will be the Southwest, which we've covered here, hopefully in detail. Emily, thank you so much. We'll look for those expert picks at Oaklawn.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And Ashley, great to work with you. Finally, it's been too long, so hopefully we can do it again.
I
Nick,
agree, yeah.
I'll see you again on Monday at least.
Yes, we'll be looking forward to the jury this afternoon, you and Darren going through some weekend plays.
Yes. And I'm glad that we're not singling the final leg, because I believe we were all the way live to the last leg last week, and then, we put too much faith in Cannoneer. So this time, at least we got some options.
Well, and if you're going to miss a pick 5 that was paying $22 is one word.
That's true.
Even if it was going to get you back a whopping 10% of your investment. So we will definitely try to do better. It's going to be hard for us to do.
I don't think this pick 5 has any chance of paying $22. There might be some more zeros stuck on the end if you can hit this one. That's for sure.
Yeah, there's a better chance of me riding the Oaklawn Saturday card than this pick 5 paying $22. So not going to happen. But what will happen is you being able to play along with these races at TwinSpires.com. So for Ashley and Emily, Nick here, thanks for joining us. And until next time, best of luck.